Greetings. This is Anita Talks History and Genealogy. And this is my genealogy workshop that I'm opening up for folks to come through and ask questions. I have been doing this for quite a while now. I have over 30 years of experience in researching and documenting my history, my family's history, and therefore, along the way, I began documenting the history of the people who were in the areas where my family was, where I found my ancestors primarily on the East Coast of what is now, it's the East Coast, period, because my ancestors are in Canada, my ancestors are here in the Americas, in the United States, and my ancestors were in South America. So these are the people that I'm talking about are my indigenous ancestors. And the reason that I focus on indigenous more than African is because the indigenous part of our history was stricken. It was taken from us by the colonizers, by those people. And what they were doing was they're wiping us out piece by piece and taking away our history and replacing our history with their history. It's not even their history, it's their made-up history, a history where they are the heroes, and no matter what they do, everybody around them has to be lesser than they are. So they present themselves, and I mean the colonizers who came here to the Americas, who went to Africa, who went to Australia, who went throughout Asia and made attempts to replace the indigenous population all over this world. And these people are about 10% of the population now. So their mentality is a mentality of, we need to replace these people because there's too many of them and there's not enough of us. And when I'm saying that, this is a backdrop to what happened in my family. And come to find out, it happened to many other families too. That they came here to the United States, and yes, there were slaves that came, that were brought here. But I'm speaking about my ancestors who were here when they came, the indigenous people. I'm talking about the Inca, the Aztec, the Arawak, Taino, the Mohawk, all of these, the Cherokee, all of these throughout the entirety of the Americas, there were indigenous people. There are indigenous people in Brazil, in the Amazon forest today. And they're trying to get rid of them. The media doesn't even talk about those people, those indigenous people who are in the Amazon forest, whose land is being sold off away from them whose land is being stripped, whose land is being exploited for oil, for gold, for gas, for its mineral wealth. Because these people, this tiny minority of people, want everything for themselves right now. And they have no vision or plan for the future, only for right now, the money and the power that they can have right now. And they call themselves, or rather their followers call them, Christians. They are not religious people. I don't care, what you call yourself. We know you by your actions. We know you by the deeds that you have done to us, to our people. And so when I'm talking about genealogy, and I want to hold a workshop because folks ask me questions all the time. So what I try to do is to answer the questions. And, I want to have this workshop now. And I've invited people to come. And I'm not going to, continue to, what I'm, writing on my YouTube channel, Anita Talks History and Genealogy, or on TikTok. I'm on TikTok. I'm on Facebook, and also a little less so. I don't do much genealogy on X, but the reason that I'm on these forums is to speak about what people have been told to hush up about. We've been told that we're not me, because I am a member of the Monica Indian Nation in Virginia, and I'm entitled. My family's entitled to be the members of several of the tribes throughout the Northeast, and but this federal government only allows us to have allegiance to one tribe. So, to that, I'm a member of the Monica Indian Nation, and it's in Amherst County, Virginia. And I'm also a member, or was accepted into the Daughters of the American Revolution through my ancestors. So I've done a lot of work proving, because we always have to prove who we say we are. They never have to prove who they say they are. They come here from any part of Europe and become American. Just, not Italian American, not German American, not Polish American, or English, or or wherever they come from. They just become blended in as a white American with all the privileges thereof. Not for doing anything, not for building a country, just for having a white face, just for not being melanated. You know what I'm saying? And so this is the illusion that we live under, that these people who have come here to our ancestral homeland and colonized it, brought their own, they call themselves civilized. How does any civilized person rape, rob, murder, and replace the people who were here for thousands of years before these people ever showed up, before you were even white people? These people here, the indigenous people, have been on this land. They have been in Africa. You go to Africa, which is real curious to me. You go to Africa and tell the Africans they're not nothing. They're on a continent that's 5 times bigger than Europe, where you come from, have been there from time immemorial. And yet you go there and tell them you're superior to them. when the Moors, who were African, went to Europe, to Spain, they built civilizations there. They took art and culture and science and built buildings that are still standing. That's what they did when they went into Europe. They did not go into Europe and try to conquer the people there. They lived with the people who were there. And it just doesn't make sense to me how you can be so arrogant when you're the last people to come off the tree. You're like the little leaf. The root is Africa, and the tree, the branches are the people who came out of Africa, and then you're the leaves on the tree. You're the least developed of everything. You're not even the fruit of the tree. You're the leaf of the tree. You're a weak branch of the tree, and you want to challenge the tree and the roots of the tree. And you do that, and then take away any advantage or any system that allows my people to succeed. You're calling out DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. There shouldn't even have to be one in a so-called democratic society. There shouldn't have to be one. But the laws, you people deliberately try to block out everyone else. And then even when you get in the institutions and there's no competition, you still don't have critical thinking skills. What's up with that? You're worried about critical race theory. What is that about? If we're not mentally capable, why are you concerned about critical race theory? Because the only CRT that I see is you trying to tell us that you're God's chosen people, you're smarter than everyone, you're more intellectual than everyone, and you're this, that, and the other. But then at the same time, you're trying to kick out every advantage from a system that we are paying taxes into, that our ancestors built for free. You don't want us in our homeland to prosper. That's not Christian. That's not the Christ, the Ethiopian Christ that we know about. That not the one that I was told about, not the one that I saw in operation in the little community that I was raised in Pennsylvania. So, I don't get it. So we are trying to spread the word about indigenous people and who the indigenous people were and the face of the indigenous people. And this is the face of one of the, of an indigenous person. This is the face. Check it out. My ancestors are indigenous to the Americas. I have one ancestor that came here from Guinea, West Africa. She was 12 years old. Her name is great-great-grandmother Leah, and I always talk about her. She was in 1830, and when it was against the law to sell African slaves, the Dutch went there and kidnapped her and the other children from her village. They were Muslim. They were Muslim, Malinke, from Guinea. Brought them first to Bermuda to be seasoned because it was against the law to sell African slaves here in the Americas. So, when they had Kunta Kinte and they were seasoning, when they were seasoning them, well, they did the same thing to my ancestor. who was 12 years old, and the children that they kidnapped from her village. I believe they burned the village down and or killed the people, because she said that we, the children, were at the river panning gold when the slavers came up and they took us. And she said they took them 5 miles down to the Dutch ship, to their ship, put them on the ship. I think they were there looking for gold. I don't think they were there looking for slaves. But they just decided to take the children. They didn't take the children and leave the gold. And she wound up in South Carolina. And she wound up being sold to this man named Robert Ruth. And he's impregnated her 4 times. He is my great-great-grandfather. And I proved it. I proved it. Because his descendants from the white wife he had are my DNA cousins. And whenever we bump into each other on Ancestry, they'll say, "Oh, you must be a descendant of Robert Ruth." So they know. We all know. I mean, we're not getting together for tea or nothing, but we know who we are. So these are the white people who are in our family. And Samuel Ruth, who is the son of Leah, his father was white and his mother was African. He's my great-grandfather. And he married Maria Louisa Penn, who was indigenous. I'm a member of the Monica Indian Nation through Maria Louisa Penn's lines, long lines. And I've met many cousins from the Penn line. They're Virginia. They're in Virginia, North Carolina. It's actually the Evans Penn line. So they're the cousins that I met. Some of them are native, are light-skinned natives. Some of them are brown-skinned natives. But this is our indigenous lines through my mother's mother, my grandmother, Leah Ruth Martin. That's my mother's mother. Through those lines, we are indigenous. Through my father's lines, on my grandfather's side, we are indigenous. Our lines came from Colombia, South America, and they are the indigenous people to Colombia, South America. And guess who's telling us all this? African DNA told us. My brother took a test through African DNA because we were trying to find a tribe that we came from in Africa. And they were like, no, hold up. Your line is indigenous to the Americas, Colombia, South America, not the European Colombians, but that native Colombians, the indigenous Colombians. So he has a certificate of native heritage from African, because they give out certificates. And so that's a direct line. Our direct lines are, through maternal and through paternal. So that's a straight direct line, but these lines intermarry and intermix with other people. But my mother's people and my father's people never left the Americas. They're here. They were here. They intermixed and intermarried with folks that came here, white folks who messed with, with my native ancestors and with my African ancestor who came here. So they're in my line. So I trace those people back to Europe, to England, no, Wales, to what, because the English, um, the Anglos um, colonized Wales too. And their story is just as grim and as ours is, because the Welsh were a dark-skinned people. The Welsh still have their own language, but after being colonized, they're much lighter. Um, like Tom Jones, the singer, the entertainer, he says that he could walk in Harlem and they thought he was a brother. Okay, so the Welsh people that we're related to were the original people of Britain, the Lewins. They were the Llewellyns. And they were all intermixed in Virginia with George Washington, and they were all intermarrying with each other. These so-called prominent Europeans who came, who were planters, slave owners, but they wanted us to call them planters. So that's part of my DNA. I mean, when I'm talking to you about my DNA, everything that I'm saying, I have documentation for. Whenever I write my books, I have 7 books, all available to Amazon.com. And those 7 books are from my researching and documenting my family lines, telling the truth, where so many lies were told, where so much work went into covering up our family history, not only ours, but those people of ours who were of no use to European, because they wanted to be with Pocahontas because she was set to be queen. She was going to be queen of the Pamunkeys. Her mother was queen of the Pamunkeys, and her father was Powhatan. So her mother died of childbirth, and her name was Matoaka. That's what her father named her, Matoaka. She was going to be, she was between 2 tribes. She was uniting those tribes, the Powhatan and the Pamunkey. And the English wanted her because she was of noble birth, because she was going to sit on the throne of the Pamunkey. And that's why they wanted to impregnate her and have her child come back here and have other part native, part white offspring, which is what they did. They did it in Africa too. It's not nothing new. Those minds that sit around and think up sick stuff and say they're doing it in the name of some God. It's not a Christian God. I don't know. Maybe it's one of their pagan gods, but it's not a Christian God. No Christian that I know of would do that type of thing, would commit the atrocities they committed, and then get upset when somebody mistakenly kills one of theirs. They have a fit. Well, I guess they do because there's so few of them. So they can continue to, not all of them, think people. I'm not talking about all of them, but you know what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about the ones who actually practice Christianity, because God knows who the true Christians are. God knows what Christ looked like when he walked this earth and what his people looked like, because they're still there in Ethiopia looking the same way they looked when he was there. And they have pictures of him, depictions of him and his mother Mary. So y'all can keep on telling that lie, that, about a white Jesus if you want to. You know, at least in Islam, the Prophet Muhammad is not. There's no depiction of him, and I think that's a smart move. Um, the same way that when I talk to people that I know in Greece, they don't have no depiction of Christ because God is spirit. God is not, you know, a color. God is spirit. Creation is spirit. Period. And you know, this is you know, whenever you have an effigy, and you're most of the people, even those who have effigies, know that that is not who they're worshiping. That what they're worshiping has to do with spiritual things, with creation, which is much bigger than a person, or and certainly bigger than an effigy. You know, um, so so when I'm talking about, being indigenous and to these lands, and like, they have no idea the look, the one look of the indigenous people. All they said, they decided that they were going to take those who they intermixed with, those that would be the face of the indigenous people. And they even lightened up the depictions that they themselves had when they first came here. Lightened them up, gave them thinner noses, you know. Um, and not only did they do that, you know, in their books and stuff like that, but they also lightened up. They lightened it. They set up a racial hierarchy where it was them at the top, of course, the indigenous people who mixed with them underneath them, those who were darker underneath the indigenous people that mixed with them, which is like the indigenous people that mixed with them were mulatto. So then they had different different words to describe the mixture. Like you could be a quadroon, you could be mestizo, and then at the very bottom is African, and then that one drop rule. So what difference does it make who the others were? If they have one drop of African in them, they were considered African. That's because of the melanin. So that one drop rule had to do with the melanin. We know that now. I wonder if they ever knew it, or if it was just their racism speaking. But um, you know, so this is, them looking at us coming from Europe, taking the land, squatting on the land, setting up a European type of dictatorship here in the Americas, and enslaving or impregnating the native people, the indigenous people, and moving them around, killing off the women and children. And, of course, they were killing the men off. They were all at war. So they were killing the men off. They were clearing the land. Manipulate these people, talking to those people who were more spiritual than their toenail, and telling them that they were savages. Here you are murdering, raping, robbing, but you're telling these people over here, oh, you're the savages. And that's called projecting. And they continue to do that to this day. Okay. So This is what my ancestors lived under. This is the attitude that was actually more prevalent back then than even now. It's they hide it a little bit better now, but they don't want you. They'll tell that the only history they want you to hear is the one that they're telling. They do not want us talking, knowing the history, talking about the history, or writing about it. So I wrote 7 CRT books, and don't expect them to ever, I know they're not going to be bestsellers, but at least I know that I put the truth in there. I put my truth in because I put down what I found and what I could cite, and also merged it with what I have been told about my family history. And the important thing is when you start, that you know where were your people at, what city, what township, what county, what state, and wherever they were at, where they moved around, where did they go? Did they change the boundaries? Like they were divided up land into tracts, and when they were dividing up their land, they would cut off the indigenous people's land so that your village that sat there for thousands of years, they would divide that village up into a city or a county, and then cut it up into tracts to sell to their people coming from Europe, to the colonizers. And that has been something that moved a lot of people, caused a lot of Native people to be out in the wilderness. Like the natives, my ancestors, where we were born and raised, there was all kinds of rivers and streams. So they were always by rivers. They were always by waterways. They moved them away from the waterways, from the fish, from where they could make their houses, because they have long houses, and they use the mud and the bark and the trees to build their communities. They moved them away from that. They took the buffalo away from them. They took the bison away from them. Everything. And yet we're still here. I'm here. And I'm here to talk about my ancestors, what was good about the ancestors, and what I know to be true about my ancestors. And, and I'm, opening up this workshop and hoping that people will come and ask questions, because I get a lot of questions. So I'm going to close the workshop right now. It's live streaming, and I hope that people get a chance to hear on the live stream, even though I can't see, you're not asking questions. But this is Anita Talks History and Genealogy. I'm on YouTube, and we have merchandise now, and we're steadily growing as people learn about the history and how to document your family history, and how to turn what they said into facts. That's what I did. My books are notes and documents of free persons of color. There's 2 editions of that. There's along the Rappahannock. There is pieces of the quilt, the mosaic of an African American family. There's a nation of flaws, just us in the homeland. Um, um, Also, my last book, Minkwa Anami Okihoki and the Downriver Nations. And then there's Black Mink with the Life and Times of Henry Green. And this is 7 books that are all available on Amazon, and they're also available through me if you want signed copy. Send me, email me at ntaWls@gmail.com and let me know. And you can also donate. You can subscribe. That's what I would suggest that you do, because you can subscribe. You can please like my channel. Please share my channel, and also comment and ask questions, which is what's being done. I'm here today hoping to answer some questions, but talking into the wind actually. So I'm about to wrap it up. And again, you can Cash App me any donations at $WILLS 920, or Venmo, or you can Venmo at Anita, ANITA Wills, WILS -4. And with that, I will see you soon. I'm going to close out, and peace out to everybody. Keep learning, keep searching,